To set the context of what this afternoon is going to be about, we are talking about identity. And because we have acknowledged that data is the new oil, oil now translating into the form of identity, and identity is becoming the new asset class. What we're going to be talking about this afternoon, as you see behind me, Identity Theft 3.0, but this is much, much more complex than just theft. This is actually what constitutes identity. What are some of the dark side, light side aspects of trading in identity and constructing that, and then we'll actually talk about some of the vulnerabilities and the way we need to think about privacy and permission, but how we move into this new world of big data and identity, which will be the new currency. And this is not something that I'm joking about. It will be the immediate currency in the immediate future due to the amount of data and the digital equity we were creating in this industry. So I would like to invite up the first of our panel that will be joining us. Bianca, please come up and join me.
Thanks, Charlie.
Would you like to tell us who and what you are and what you do?
Well, what is my identity? Thanks for having me, everyone. My name is Bianca Lopez, and my day identity is that I'm a Chief Identity Officer at Bioconnect. We're a Toronto-based company, and what we do is we do biometrics. So the reason why I started getting fascinated with identity is because a lot of people in the industry think identity could be biometrics because it's who you are. So I'm sort of excited to be talking about this today.
Thank you for joining us. Thanks
so much.
And for the next panelist, Vladan, would you like to join me as well? Now, Vladan, we heard from you earlier this morning, but there are some people who don't know who you are and what you identify as. Can you tell us who?
Okay, so I also have like multiple identities. So like on Mondays, I'm working as a professor at one university. On other working days, I'm working as a director of Share Foundation. But most of the time during the night, I think I'm some kind of data investigation detective. So
thank you. We'll be talking more about that depth of data. Thank you, Vladan. And the last of our panelists, Pablos, would you like to join me?
Yeah.
All right, who are you and what do you do?
Who am I? I'm a computer hacker, but I work at the Intellectual Ventures Lab for Nathan Myhrvold and Bill Gates, inventing kind of next generation technologies. And so to some extent, I'm trying to figure out where this stuff is going.
So the future of identity.
Yeah.
Thank you. Join us here. Bianca, I'll turn it over to you to kick it off.
What is identity? Why is my identity fundamentally different when I put perhaps my photo on Facebook than I would put on LinkedIn? Is that an ability or a power tool for me to portray my identity as I want you to perceive it? Maybe my photo is going to be super serious because I'm trying to get an impression across, and that identity is going to be an ability that I have in order to convey you. What I found also interesting as I went through this sort of journey of understanding what identity is it really an enabling tool? A lot of people talk about identity as a financial inclusion tool. A lot of people talk about identity being authentication. Often spending time with financial services industries and banks, they will say, I have an identity strategy. To me, identity isn't just authentication. Is a way of building a strategy, is a way of understanding that perhaps in the past you've been the discretionary manager of someone's money. And if today, as Gila started off, if you're going to be the discretionary manager of my data, if you don't understand my identity, how could you ever manage my data accordingly or appropriately? We were actually just chatting about it before. When was the last time we talked to your banker? I was like, well, if my banker can't give me better recommendations than my Instagram can, do I really want to go talk to them? And what does that mean? So what do you guys think?
So you have some kind of identity on Facebook and you are like building your image there or something like this. But in the moment when, for example, government or banks or insurance agencies start to use Facebook as a platform to know better about you, and then if you are aware of that, if you are aware that what is posted on your Facebook can like decide, are you going to get some visa for United States, for example, or are you going to get a job, or are you...
You'd probably be a lot more conscious of what you're putting out there, right?
Exactly. And then what is your, like, the picture that you are, like, building there? Is it, like, your real identity, or you are building some kind of new fake picture of identity that should look like other actors want to look? So that's the question of, like, you know, like data and all of those things that we are publishing on Facebook and on other platforms, how they're in one moment by understanding that someone is looking at not our friends, but like companies or government, how it become some kind of mean of social control. Because we are building, like, we cannot express ourselves freely.
When you're talking about, you know, identity as we've managed it historically, let's say, where, you know, I'm a person, you're my bank, you've got a bunch of information about me that you need for a couple of reasons. One, you want to know if you can keep loaning me money. Another one is you want to know if I'm the guy who should be able to tell you what to do with my money. And, you know, historically what we've done is just collected more and more and more data to be able to use to help us make those decisions. But then we've kind of gotten that habit, and so we use it for authentication too. And that's why, like, you know, now when you call, they want to know your full address, your mother's maiden name, your social security number, your PIN code. Like, there's just all this crap that's sort of a proxy for authentication.
I often find when you talk about privacy, a lot of the people in privacy are brilliant, but they sound, I joke around, they sound like my old high school principal. They're like, don't share your data.
Yeah.
And I think the average consumer that perhaps likely is not in this room is not aware of this notion.
Yeah,
Right? They're like, passwords are annoying. That's the most that you hear. A lot of the headlines talk about identity, and therefore maybe I should have a more complicated one. But is that really solving the identity data problem?
We got browsing history of one guy, and we really needed, like, I don't know, like really matter of minutes, maybe 1 or 2, to get the real name identity of the guy just based on his like browsing history, because of his visits to Facebook page name.surname, you know? And so on, so on. And then by just analyzing browsing history, we were able to flow through his mind, like how he's thinking. We were able to understand like his thoughts, not just his like name, surname, or whatever. We were able to reconstruct his complete social graph, interactions, the patterns, anomalies, and everything, just based on the browsing history. We are all faking these identities on Facebook, on LinkedIn, everything. Everything is fake, you know. We are just projecting.
But you're not faking your browser history.
Exactly.
That's
okay.
what you pointed out,
that's different.
right?
Yeah.
And so the data, I mean, whether it's, you know, the stuff you click on and like on Facebook is vastly more interesting than what you post. Because
you're starting to fake in the moment when you understand that you are being watched, and that what you are doing,
your behavior changes.
That it will influence your job, relation, whatever. So this is when you are starting to fake. This is the moment when you're not behaving anymore normally. And this is this like kind of like Orwell 84.
Well, that's not faking. That's knowing that's your behavior changing because you're not faking anything. Your behavior is legitimately changing because of how you feel about being watched.
That's one thing I actually wonder. Is there a discussion? Do we merit that discussion of the division between privity and privacy?
The amount of shift we've had in our thinking about privacy has changed so much in the last 15 years because of social media. I mean, we take it for granted because it was this slow frog in a boiling pot kind of thing, but nobody could have imagined that people would just give everything away.
Back on this question of like identity and this reputation, I'm really curious, like future president, like in 20 years, like how this is going to happen, you know, because all of those kids that are like growing now have all of those Facebook accounts, and we still didn't.
So you're saying people wouldn't vote for somebody whose spring break photos were online?
I don't know. I think like there will be so much discriminating like evidence about like everyone. No,
I don't think incriminating evidence is a problem for getting elected as president anymore.
okay. That's probably
Maybe it's a popularity contest.
We are still not in. I think we are now coming to this time that now we have people who have like for example social networks for some times, but before now we didn't have this situation that we know everything about everyone in the past. So things are changing like rapidly, and
but we know everything about everyone, and it's mostly fine.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you think about that, how much of your personal data do you actually have secret to yourself? It's almost none. Like every transaction, everything you ever bought, some company has that. Your credit card company has it. The retailers have it. Amazon has it. All the ad networks have it. Every person you ever called, your phone company has. Everybody you're text messaging, Apple and your cell system have that. Like all that stuff is out there already. The difference between what they already have and everything is about this big. So I'm basically trying to say we're already at this point where all the data's out there. Yeah, it's not all totally cross-pollinated, not just anybody. I mean, there's companies where I can, you think about, we got like HIPAA in the US, we have medical privacy for records, right? You don't have any of your data about your medical records. It's strewn about in doctors' offices all over. And they're supposed to be keeping it private. Your insurance company has a right to all of it. They have everything because they're paying for it. And you know what? I can go buy it. I can buy a copy of all your medical history from a shady guy who has access to it from the insurance companies, right?
Let's talk about the general data privacy regulation that we are all going to have to deal with. There is something about the ownership and the inherent ownership of the individual. It is not out there for mass consumption. We now have regulations that are going to be superimposed upon us thanks to PSD2. How do we operate with identity and the notion of having massive regulatory protection over who owns it? Where's that hiccup? How do we deal with that?
Well, the first problem with that hiccup is the definition of it on PSD2. So the first definition of what, especially as it relates to biometrics and authentication, is just you need stronger customer authentication. So then you get into this whole mass of people thinking that authentication and identity are the same thing, which they're not.
Biometrics is one aspect of it. I'm going to go back to the notion of privity. My biometric information is absolutely private and unique to me. It has inherent privity. We're granting it an aspect of privacy. That's not something that, irrespective of my medical records being out there for purchase on the black market, it still has privity.
He's selling it all already.
Thanks, Pablos. I know where to get you. I'll serve the papers later for that. But there's something about that notion. How do we actually start reconciling those particular questions? What are some of the
I feel like that's a data question in terms of how do you reconcile all that. First of all, you need to aggregate the data that today lives in silos and then define how that data is the identity of that human. He thinks that the data is all out there, so how do you aggregate inside and outside? And then who is the custodian?
I think it's academic. You guys are, living in a world where all this is regulated and you want to be circumspect and you want to manage all the data in some way that's...
We're obligated to.
You're obligated to, fine, legally. But the point is, advertisers aren't. They have all that data about all of you already.
Acknowledge.
Right? You guys can pretend like you're going to keep everything secure and safe and not cause any problems, but it's not going to matter because the advertisers already have all the data.
How users can be the owner of the data, that's like so utopian idea. It's some kind of like data communism, and it's like kind of not going to happen, unfortunately.
Do you think it's because people were not capable of managing their own data the same way people weren't capable of keeping up with their own money?
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Because the one who have data, it's the main business model of the internet, like Google, Facebook, and other companies. So this surveillance capitalism, or collecting information, profiling, and selling, this is the main business that is running internet today. So like billions and billions of dollars that are coming to Facebook, Google, this is it. Why they should give this to someone else. And when we are thinking about where the data is, we should think about networks. So there is us using computer, there is internet service provider who is tunneling all the data. So they are in position, they're tunnel, and they are in position to collect a lot of information. This is why it's important, this bill that happened in the United States about that they are now able to trade browsing history data. This is interesting for the future. So you have us, you have internet service providers, and you have exchange points, and then you have companies that are, for example, Facebook, Google, and other companies. So all of those are the points. And through internet service providers, government can access data, or through companies that you are accessing. So those are the players in the game. This is where the big data is. to think that big data it's at our home, it's not big data, it's our little data of our little behavior, you know. So the problem is like this monopoly that few big players have over big data and all kind of data. This is the main problem that we need to address if we are speaking about like I don't know, identity and data exploitation and all of this. It's like where it is, and we know where it is.